Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time to a kingdom so arrogant, so convinced of its own genius, that it practically invited its own downfall. Imagine a place where the sun always seems to shine a little brighter, the harvests are always a little more bountiful, and every single person walks around with a smug smile because they just know they're the best. You're there, right now, in the heart of the capital city. A place so magnificent it makes our modern metropolises look like a pile of mismatched Lego blocks. The air is thick with the scent of roasted meats, expensive perfumes, and the faint, dusty smell of ancient scrolls from the royal library. It's a kingdom built on a foundation of unshakable confidence. And you, my friend, are living in its gilded age. You're strolling through a bustling marketplace, a vibrant tapestry of life and commerce. Merchants are hawking their wares, shimmering silks from the eastern lands, exotic spices that promise to awaken the senses, and sparkling gems from deep within the earth. Children are laughing and chasing each other through the throngs of people, their carefree innocence a testament to the kingdom's prosperity. You feel it in your bones, this sense of security, this belief that nothing could ever touch this place. The kingdom's engineers have built monumental aqueducts that bring fresh water from the distant mountains. Its healers have developed remedies for common ailments that baffle neighboring lands. And its scholars are constantly pushing the boundaries of knowledge. You are, for all intents and purposes, living a dream. But here's the thing about dreams: they can turn into nightmares. You, in all your privileged existence, are perhaps more vulnerable than you know. Your kingdom's grand achievements have created a blind spot, a dangerous hubris that makes it impossible to see the quiet storm brewing on the horizon. If you were really here, in this time, you probably wouldn't survive the coming crisis. Your soft hands, your pampered lifestyle, they're not built for what's about to happen. The very things that make this kingdom great are the things that will make you a perfect host for a silent, unseen enemy. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always wild to think about us all connecting across time zones and distances, sharing these stories together. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're still there, in the bustling heart of the kingdom. But a tiny, almost imperceptible tremor of unease has begun to ripple through the perfect surface of your world. It starts not in the grand palaces or the bustling marketplaces, but in the forgotten corners, the cramped, unsanitary alleys where the poor and the marginalized huddle together. It's a whisper, a rumor carried on the wind, about a strange new illness. You hear it first from a street sweeper, a man with a perpetual stoop and a cough that rattles his bones. He tells you of a sickness that takes hold with a fever and a terrible ache in the joints. A sickness that leaves its victims looking pale and ghostly. You dismiss it. Of course, it's a sickness for them, for the unwashed masses in their squalid hovels. You, a member of the kingdom's more fortunate class, are surely immune to such a thing. Your grand aqueducts bring you clean water. Your finely woven clothes are free of the filth of the streets, and your meals are prepared by skilled chefs in clean kitchens. You are a different species, you believe, a higher order of being. This is the great tragedy of your kingdom. Its social hierarchy is so rigid, its classes so distinct, that the suffering of one group is utterly invisible to another. You walk on, your mind already forgetting the street sweeper's story, focused instead on the promise of a lavish dinner party. This is a common historical fact. By the way, societies throughout history have often turned a blind eye to the suffering of their poorest citizens, believing that a different set of rules, of biology, of fate, applies to them. It's a convenient fiction, one that allows you to sleep soundly at night while your fellow humans are suffering. This selective blindness is about to cost your kingdom everything. The illness, meanwhile, is no longer a whisper. It's a cough, then a fever, then a line of pallid faces in the back of a carriage, being carted off to some unknown fate. The physicians of the kingdom, all men of wealth and status, initially dismiss the illness as a minor affliction, perhaps a seasonal fever that will soon pass. They diagnose it as a common humbug, a term they've invented to describe a host of minor complaints that don't warrant their full attention. They write it off as a disease of bad humors, of poor constitution, of a lack of moral fortitude. They don't bother to visit the crowded tenements where the sickness is truly taking hold. They don't bother to examine the victims with any real care. They are too busy, after all. With the health concerns of the aristocracy, a touch of gout here, a minor fainting spell there. It's a fascinating and often tragic aspect of medical history that for so long, medicine was a privilege, not a right. The poor were left to the whims of folk remedies and their own luck, while the wealthy received the best, or at least the most expensive care available. But this illness is different. It's not a seasonal fever. It's not a disease of bad humors. It is a cunning, brutal enemy that doesn't care about your social standing or the thickness of your wallet. It's a microscopic plague, an unseen force of nature that is just as happy to take a king as it is a pauper. And it is spreading. You begin to notice it, not in the back alleys, but in the places you frequent. A footman in the palace develops a hacking cough. A seamstress who works on your family's clothes doesn't show up for work one morning. A baker's apprentice, who used to sing and laugh while kneading dough, now stands silently, his face a pale mask of exhaustion. These are small cracks in the veneer of perfection, but they are cracks nonetheless. You find yourself becoming more aware of coughs and sneezes, a nervous habit that you can't quite shake. You start to see the telltale signs of the sickness in people around you, the glazed eyes, the feverish flush on their cheeks, the general air of weakness that hangs about them like a shroud. One day, you are summoned to the royal court. The king, a man who sees himself as the embodiment of his kingdom's greatness, is holding an emergency meeting. The illness has finally reached the palace, striking down a few of his lower-ranking servants. The king, a man of immense ego, sees this not as a sign of a crisis, but as an insult. He believes his kingdom is a fortress, and this plague, this common humbug, is a mere annoyance, a gnat that needs to be swatted away. You hear him speak, his voice booming with confidence, even as a cough echoes from a corner of the great hall. This plague, he declares, is a disease of the weak. It is a product of poor sanitation and a lack of proper education. We will not let it sully our great kingdom. We will simply clean up the afflicted areas, and this will be the end of it. He orders the construction of a great wall, not around the kingdom, but around the poorest district of the city, where the plague has its firmest grip. He believes that by isolating the problem, he can make it disappear. He believes that by simply not looking at it, the problem will cease to exist. This is the king's grand folly, the first of many disastrous decisions. He is building a wall, not to protect his people, but to protect his pride. He is creating a ghetto, a place where the sick will be left to die, and he is doing it with the full weight of his authority. Convinced that he is acting in the best interests of the kingdom, the historians still debate whether the king's actions were born of pure callousness or an almost unbelievable ignorance. Was he so detached from reality that he truly believed a wall could stop a disease carried on the wind, in the water, and on the very clothes of his people? Or did he simply not care about the lives of the poor? The academic debate, of course, is a luxury for you, living in this moment. The answer is irrelevant. All you see is a wall going up, a physical manifestation of your kingdom's social divide, a monument to its fatal arrogance. And behind that wall, the disease is festering, growing stronger, and preparing to leap over the very barrier meant to contain it. The king has just given the plague exactly what it needs: a confined, desperate population in which to multiply and mutate. You watch as the construction begins, the wall rising brick by brick, a stark reminder of the kingdom's new reality. The sounds of hammers and chisels are a constant, grating presence, drowning out the once cheerful sounds of the marketplace. The air, once filled with the scent of spices and perfumes, now carries the metallic tang of newly quarried stone and the faint, unsettling odor of the sickness itself. You see the faces of the people being walled in, their expressions a mix of fear and resignation. Some bang on the gates, begging to be let out, but the guards, clad in gleaming armor, stand impassive, their orders clear. The king has spoken, and his word is law. The kingdom, in its collective denial, has decided to sacrifice a portion of its people for the supposed good of the whole, and you, in your comfortable home, are complicit. You are a part of the society that has turned its back on its own. But the plague, as you're beginning to realize, is not something that can be reasoned with or contained by physical walls. It's not a sentient being, but it acts with a kind of cunning, an instinct for survival that outsmarts the kingdom's most brilliant minds. It's a tiny, microscopic horror that sees the wall not as a barrier, but as an opportunity. The kingdom's hubris has handed the plague a perfect incubator, a place where it can spread unchecked, evolving and strengthening in the dense, isolated population. The very act of sealing off the sick has created a ticking time bomb. You hear stories, rumors carried by those who somehow managed to slip through the cracks, of a new, more virulent strain of the illness emerging from behind the walls. A sickness that is no longer a simple fever, but a swift and brutal killer, leaving its victims with a strange, dark mottling on their skin. The common humbug is now something far more sinister, far more terrifying. You start to notice the small details, the ones that you would have overlooked before. The king's grand aqueducts, once a symbol of his kingdom's ingenuity, are now a source of silent dread. You remember a detail that a forgotten scholar once wrote about. A little-known fact that most people dismiss as a curiosity: the aqueducts, while bringing clean water from the mountains, also pass through the very district now being walled off. It's an intricate system of pipes and channels. And while the kingdom's engineers are masters of their craft, they are not infallible. Could the sickness, in its unseen form, be seeping into the very water you drink? It's a terrifying thought, one that you immediately try to banish from your mind. You tell yourself that the system is perfect, that no disease could ever penetrate its defenses. But the seed of doubt has been planted. The kingdom's greatest achievement, its very lifeblood, might also be its greatest weakness. You see a man drinking from a public fountain, his face pale, his hands shaking, and you find yourself wondering what exactly is in that water. The king, in his magnificent ignorance, continues to hold court, to plan grand parties, to deny the creeping dread that is slowly enveloping his kingdom. He believes his wall has solved the problem. He believes the rumors of a new, more deadly strain are just that, rumors. He believes his kingdom is still a golden age, and its flawless ruler. But you, watching from the sidelines, can see the cracks widening, the perfect facade beginning to crumble. The kingdom, in its arrogance, has challenged an enemy it doesn't understand, and that enemy has just played its first and most devastating move. The wall, meant to save the kingdom, has just sealed its fate, and you, a privileged citizen of this doomed kingdom, are standing on the precipice, about to fall into a nightmare of your own making. The golden age is over. The plague has outsmarted the entire kingdom, and its true reign of terror is about to begin. The king's grand folly has not just accelerated the plague's spread, it has created a weapon out of it. The next chapter of this story, the one you are about to live through, will be one of desperation and dread. A testament to the fact that even the most powerful kingdoms are only as strong as their least fortunate citizens. The whispers of a new, more virulent strain of the plague have become impossible to ignore. You're no longer just hearing rumors from the walled-off district, you're seeing the effects firsthand. The royal physicians, who once dismissed the illness as a mere humbug, are now scrambling. Their grand theories of bad humors and poor constitution crumbling in the face of a brutal new reality. They're now seeing the mottled skin, the swift onset of the fever, and the rapid progression from illness to death. They're terrified, and their fear is contagious. It's spreading through the city faster than the plague itself, a cold dread that settles deep in your bones. You walk through the streets, and the cheerful bustle is gone, replaced by a nervous energy, a constant vigilance. Everyone is watching everyone else, looking for a cough, a sneeze, a pale face, a telltale sign of the sickness that could mean their doom. It's in this atmosphere of rising panic that the whispers of a cure begin. They don't start in the royal court, or in the great halls of the kingdom's top medical academies. They start, as so many things do, in the shadowed corners of the city, in the homes of the common folk. The whispers are of a woman, a healer who lives on the outskirts of the kingdom, a woman who has a connection to the old ways, to the ancient traditions that the kingdom's modern. Arrogant physicians have long since abandoned. She's a pariah, a woman with a reputation for being a bit of a witch, a keeper of secrets that the kingdom's elite have chosen to forget. The stories say that she's been treating the sick, that she has a potion, a concoction of herbs and strange ingredients, that has been saving lives. It's a miracle, a desperate hope in a kingdom that has lost all faith in its own leadership. You hear this from a baker, a man whose cousin was struck down by the new strain of the plague. He says his cousin, on the verge of death, was given the healer's potion, and within a day, the fever broke. And this is a detail that most people wouldn't know, a historical tidbit that often gets lost in the grand narratives of kings and battles. For centuries, across countless cultures, there have been these folk healers, people who possessed a deep empirical knowledge of local plants and remedies. Their treatments were often effective, passed down through generations, but they were almost always dismissed as superstition by the educated elite. In your kingdom, this healer and her knowledge are the very antithesis of everything the king stands for. She is a symbol of the old ways, a reminder that the kingdom's so-called progress has come at a cost, and now, in its moment of crisis. The kingdom is being forced to confront its own arrogance. The whispers of this cure are a direct challenge to the authority of the royal physicians, to the very foundation of the kingdom's self-belief. It's a brilliant turn of events. A bit of ironic justice from the universe. The royal physicians, of course, are horrified. They see this cure not as a solution, but as an affront to their intelligence. They denounce the healer as a fraud, a charlatan, a dangerous lunatic who is preying on the fears of the ignorant. They argue that her potion is worthless, that any claims of its efficacy are mere coincidence or lies. They are not just protecting their reputations, they are protecting their entire worldview. To admit that this outcast woman holds the key to a cure would be to admit that their entire system of knowledge is flawed, that their grand theories are nothing more than hot air, so they double down on their denial. Even as the death toll continues to rise, they argue that a more scientific approach is needed, that they must study the plague, understand its mechanisms, and then, and only then, will they be able to find a true, legitimate cure. They are so consumed by their own pride that they are willing to let more people die rather than admit they were wrong. A fascinating academic debate still rages among historians about this exact moment. Was it a simple matter of professional jealousy? Or was it a deeper, more fundamental conflict between two ways of knowing Was it a battle between empirical, hands-on knowledge and theoretical, abstract knowledge? Or was it just a clash of egos, pure and simple? It's a question without a clear answer. And for you, living through it. The debate is irrelevant. All you know is that people are dying, and a potential cure is being dismissed out of hand by the very people who are supposed to be protecting you. You hear a joke in the marketplace. A dark, biting bit of gallows humor. What's the difference between the royal physicians and the plague? The plague at least tries to kill you quickly. It's a joke that perfectly encapsulates the kingdom's new, cynical mood. The king, meanwhile, is caught in the middle. His own court is divided. Some of his advisors, terrified by the mounting death toll, are urging him to consider the healer's cure. They argue that at this point, any hope, no matter how unorthodox, is better than none. Others, the more traditionalist faction, are siding with the royal physicians, arguing that to turn to a witch would be a sign of weakness, a capitulation to superstition that would damage the kingdom's reputation forever. The king, a man who has always prided himself on his unwavering confidence, is now seeing that confidence begin to falter. He's a man of action, but he has no idea what to do. His grand wall has failed, and now his kingdom is being torn apart from within, not just by the plague, but by this desperate fundamental disagreement. The whispers of a cure have become a political powder keg, threatening to shatter the kingdom's fragile unity. You, as a citizen, are forced to choose a side. Even if you don't realize it, do you trust the established, but now clearly failing authority of the royal physicians? Or do you put your faith in a marginalized healer, a woman who goes against everything your society has been taught to believe? This isn't just a medical choice, it's a social and a moral one. The entire kingdom is having this same debate, in hushed tones over dinner tables, in angry arguments in the public squares, in the terrified prayers of those who have lost loved ones. The kingdom, in its golden age, never had to face a moral dilemma like this. Its choices were always clear, its path forward always paved with progress and certainty. Now, the path is obscured, and every decision feels like a gamble. The whispers of the cure are becoming louder, more insistent. You learn more about the healer, a woman named Ilara. She's not some mystical figure in a tower, she's a down-to-earth, no-nonsense woman who lives in a small, well-kept cottage on the edge of a forest. She uses herbs, roots, and flowers, ingredients that she has gathered and studied for her entire life. She believes the illness is not a punishment from the gods or a product of bad humors, but a natural phenomenon that can be fought with the resources of the earth itself. Her approach is a simple one: support the body's own defenses with natural compounds, and let the body fight the plague on its own terms. It's an approach that is utterly foreign to the royal physicians, who are still stuck on ideas of balancing bodily fluids and purging the system with harsh, often poisonous, remedies. This is a fun bit of historical trivia for you. For a long time, across many different cultures, the idea of holistic healing, of using natural remedies to support the body, was the most common form of medicine. It was only later, with the rise of more modern medicine, that these practices were often pushed aside in favor of more aggressive, and often less effective, treatments. The royal physicians in your kingdom are a perfect example of this. They are so focused on the science of their time, on their grand theories, that they have lost touch with the simple, effective knowledge that has been around for centuries. They are a bit like that friend who insists on using a complicated, expensive gadget to do a simple job that could be done with a hammer. It's a bit ridiculous and a bit tragic, all at the same time. You're at a dinner party, a somber affair where the usual witty banter has been replaced by hushed conversations about the plague. The topic of the healer, Ilara, comes up. A nobleman scoffs, dismissing her as a backwoods crone. He talks about the need for a civilized cure, a cure that is based on reason and logic, not on folklore and superstition. He's a man of the old guard, a man who is terrified of change, but a younger woman, a scholar who has spent her life studying ancient texts, speaks up. She says that she has found references to similar plagues in the old histories, and that in every case, the people who survived were the ones who turned to the simple, natural remedies of the time. She argues that the kingdom has become too arrogant, too reliant on its own self-proclaimed brilliance, and that it has forgotten the lessons of the past. Her words hang in the air, a challenge to the entire room. The nobleman is furious, but he has no real answer. The fear in the room is palpable, a silent acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, the scholar is right. This conversation, this argument, is happening all over the kingdom. The whispers of the cure have become a full-blown debate, and the kingdom is being torn apart by it. The king, seeing his authority and his kingdom's unity begin to unravel, is finally forced to act. He can no longer sit back and let the debate rage. He has to make a choice, a terrible, desperate choice that will either save his kingdom or destroy what little is left of it. He summons his most trusted advisors, both the traditionalists and the ones who are more open to the healer's remedies. He has to decide whether to officially sanction the healer's cure, or to double down on the royal physician's approach and hope they can come up with something before it's too late. The fate of the kingdom, and of your own life, hangs in the balance. The whispers of a cure have not just challenged the kingdom's medical establishment, they have exposed a fatal flaw in its very foundation. And now, the kingdom is standing at a crossroads, with no clear path forward. The king, a man unaccustomed to doubt, finds himself in an agonizing position. The whispers of Alara's cure have grown into a roar, and the kingdom's leaders are fiercely divided. On one side, you have the royal physicians, a collective of men who have built their entire careers on the established medical dogma. They stand firm in their rejection of Alara's remedies, denouncing them as unscientific and dangerous. To them, her cures are not just ineffective, they are an existential threat to the very idea of rational, learned medicine. To sanction her would be to admit that their life's work is a sham, and that the kingdom's grand. Progressive ideals are built on sand. They propose a different solution, one that sounds impressive and official, a massive public health initiative. They call for the city to be fumigated with special herbs, for the sick to be quarantined in specially built hospitals, and for a team of their best minds to begin a rigorous academic study of the disease's origins. It's a safe, traditional approach, one that has a long history of failing spectacularly in the face of epidemics. But it's an approach that feels right to them, an approach that adheres to the established rules of their world. On the other side of the argument are the king's more pragmatic advisors, those who have seen the death toll firsthand and are no longer swayed by academic rhetoric. They argue that the kingdom is past the point of safe, traditional solutions. They point to the fact that the royal physician's previous efforts, including the king's grand folly of the wall, have only made things worse. They argue that the only thing that matters now is saving lives, and that if a backwoods crone holds the key, then so be it. They present the king with testimonials from those who have been cured by Alara, stories that are powerful and compelling in their simplicity. They argue that while the royal physicians are busy debating theories and planning long-term studies, Alara is actually saving people. Right now, in this moment of desperate crisis, the kingdom's top minds are forced to make a choice between a traditional, safe approach and a radical, unproven one. It's a truly terrible position to be in, a classic damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. The king, a man of pride, initially leans toward the royal physicians. Their arguments are logical, their approach is orderly, and their solution, on paper, makes perfect sense. It's a solution that allows him to save face, to maintain the illusion of his kingdom's greatness. But then, a subtle but significant event changes his mind. His own son, the crown prince, who has been visiting the city's poorest districts to offer aid, falls ill with the new, virulent strain of the plague. The prince, once vibrant and full of life, is now pale and feverish, his body covered in the strange, dark mottling that is the hallmark of the new disease. The royal physicians are summoned immediately, but their methods prove useless. They bleed the prince. They give him their concoctions of bitter herbs and strange salts. But nothing works. He grows weaker and weaker, and the royal physicians, for all their bluster, can only offer condolences and platitudes. They are defeated. This is a fun bit of historical irony. For a long time, the best medical care you could get was often worse than no medical care at all. The very things that doctors did to cure you, like bleeding, often made you weaker and more susceptible to the disease. The royal physicians in your kingdom are a perfect example of this. They are practicing medicine based on grand theories that are ultimately harming their patients. They are a bit like someone trying to fix a leaky pipe with a flamethrower. Their intentions might be good, but their methods are all wrong. It's a tragic comedy of errors, and the crown prince is the unfortunate star of the show. Desperate and terrified, the queen, a woman who has always been more pragmatic than her husband, takes matters into her own hands. She defies the royal physicians, defies the king's initial wishes, and sends a secret message to Ilara, the healer. She asks Ilara to come to the palace to try her cure on the crown prince, the king. Seeing his son on the brink of death, reluctantly agrees. He has no other choice. This is the moment of a desperate gamble, a moment when the kingdom, in its collective terror, finally chooses to abandon its pride and its traditions and embrace a radical, unproven solution. Ilara arrives at the palace, a small, unassuming woman in simple clothes, her hands stained with the colors of the earth. She is a stark contrast to the royal physicians, with their robes of silk and their airs of superiority. The physicians, meanwhile, are furious. They stand by, seething, As Ilara goes to work, she doesn't bleed the prince. She doesn't give him harsh concoctions. Instead, she brews a tea from a specific combination of herbs. A tea that has a soft, earthy smell. She tells the queen that the prince's body needs to be supported, not attacked. She explains that the herbs will help his immune system, that they will reduce the fever and help his body to fight the sickness on its own. She's not promising a miracle, she's promising a chance. The prince drinks the tea, and for a night, nothing seems to change. The fever is still there. The mottling is still on his skin. The royal physicians whisper to each other, a kind of smug satisfaction on their faces. "See," they seem to be saying, "we told you she was a fraud." But on the second morning, something incredible happens. The prince's fever breaks. He's weak, but he's alive. The mottling on his skin begins to fade. Within a few days, he is on the path to recovery, a living, breathing testament to Ilara's cure. The kingdom is in a state of shock. The whispers of the cure are now a certainty, a beacon of hope in a world of darkness. The king, humbled and grateful, makes a public declaration. He officially sanctions Ilara's cure, ordering that it be made available to everyone in the kingdom, regardless of their social status. He dismisses the royal physicians, or at least, he reassigns them to tasks far away from the sick. The kingdom has just made a choice, a desperate gamble that has paid off. It has chosen the radical, the unproven, the effective, over the safe, the traditional, and the useless. This moment is a huge turning point in the kingdom's history. A moment that changes not just its medical practices, but its very identity. It's a moment when the kingdom's collective arrogance is finally shattered, and its leaders are forced to confront the fact that they don't have all the answers. The king's decision, born of desperation and a father's love, is a moment of profound humility. It's an admission of failure, but also an act of courage. He has just told his entire kingdom that he was wrong, that his grand plans were flawed, and that the only thing that saved his son was the knowledge of an outcast. This is a powerful and deeply humbling lesson for him. The kingdom's denial has just been replaced by a desperate hope, and that hope is wrapped up in the hands of a woman who was, until recently, a pariah. You see the change in the city immediately. The atmosphere of fear and dread begins to lift, replaced by a cautious, fragile sense of optimism. Ilara's cure is being distributed throughout the kingdom, and the death toll, while still high, is finally beginning to slow. You see a man drinking a cup of the tea, his face pale and sick, but with a look of determination in his eyes. You see families hugging each other, a collective sigh of relief echoing through the streets. The plague has not been defeated. It is still out there, a constant threat. But now, for the first time in months, the kingdom has a weapon to fight it with. The desperate gamble has worked. The kingdom has made a choice, and that choice has given it a fighting chance. But the scars of this plague, of the king's folly, of the royal physician's arrogance will last a long, long time. The kingdom has been changed forever, and the road to recovery is still a long one. The walls of denial have crumbled, and the kingdom is finally beginning to see its true reflection, a reflection of a flawed, but not yet defeated people. The initial wave of relief and cautious optimism that swept through the kingdom following the Crown Prince's recovery is now beginning to fade. In its place, a new, more insidious problem is emerging. The king's decision to sanction Ilara's cure was a monumental step, but it was just that, a step. The plague is still a relentless enemy, and the kingdom's greatest challenge now is not just fighting the disease, but fighting its own ingrained prejudices. The kingdom has spent centuries building its identity around superiority and rigid social structures, and those walls are proving to be far more difficult to tear down than the physical wall the king built around the poor district. The people of the kingdom, in their collective desperation, were willing to embrace Ilara's cure, but they are not so willing to embrace the idea that the wealthy and the poor are facing the same threat, or that the old ways might have had value after all. You see it everywhere. The citizens of the kingdom, particularly the elite, are now erecting walls of denial, not out of stone and mortar, but out of fear and classism. They are creating social barriers, invisible lines in the sand that they hope will protect them from the reality of the plague. They're still convinced, despite all evidence to the contrary, that the disease is somehow different for them. They believe their elegant homes, their clean clothes, their fine food, all of it somehow grants them a special immunity. It's a psychological defense mechanism, a way to maintain the illusion of control in a world that has spiraled out of it. They begin to shun anyone who has been sick, even those who have recovered. They whisper about tainted families and unclean houses. The kingdom's social fabric, once so strong and proud, is beginning to fray, torn apart by this new, insidious fear. This is a common historical truth about pandemics and social divides. Throughout history, diseases have often been used as an excuse to further marginalize groups that were already on the fringes of society. It's a bit of a tragic joke. Really, you have this powerful, indifferent force of nature, a plague that doesn't care about your social status, and yet humans, in their infinite capacity for prejudice, find a way to make it all about class and status. The elite in your kingdom are a perfect example of this. They are so consumed by their own sense of superiority that they are willing to believe a lie that they are somehow immune, rather than confront the terrifying truth that they are just as vulnerable as everyone else. It's an act of profound self-deception, one that will have terrible consequences. The king, having learned a hard lesson with his first wall, is now trying to fight this new, invisible one. He makes another public declaration, urging his people to treat one another with kindness and compassion. He argues that the plague is a challenge for the entire kingdom, not just for a portion of it. He even goes so far as to announce that the royal palace will be opened to all, that no one who is sick will be turned away. He's trying to lead by example, to show his people that the old social divides must be erased if the kingdom is to survive. But the walls of denial are not so easily broken down. His words are met with a polite, but unmistakable resistance. The elite of the kingdom nod and smile, but they continue to shun the sick. They continue to believe their own fiction, their own lie. A fascinating and often overlooked detail of this time is how the plague also created strange, new social bonds. While the elite were building their walls of denial, the common people, the ones who were most affected by the plague, were forging new communities of support and care. You see it in the streets. Neighbors are helping neighbors. Families are sharing their food and their resources with those who have been struck down by the sickness. They are not just surviving, they are building a new kind of society. A society based on mutual aid and empathy, not on the rigid rules of the past. It's a beautiful and terrible thing to witness the old world crumbling, and a new one being born from the ashes of a pandemic. The kingdom's official leadership may have failed, but the kingdom's people, in their quiet, unassuming way, are beginning to find a new kind of strength. Meanwhile, the royal physicians, now relegated to administrative duties, are not taking their demotion well. They have a vested interest in the failure of Alara's cure, and they are doing everything in their power to undermine it. They're spreading rumors, whispering in the ears of the remaining elite that the cure is not a cure at all, but a temporary reprieve, a temporary masking of symptoms that will lead to a more terrible fate. They're arguing that the king's endorsement of a witch is a sign of his weakness, a sign that the kingdom is losing its way. They're not just fighting a cure, they're fighting for their professional lives, for their entire way of being. They are a perfect example of how institutions, once they become entrenched, will fight to their last breath to maintain the status quo. Even if it's a status quo that is clearly failing, the academic debate still rages on this very point. Were the royal physicians driven by genuine concern for the kingdom's future? Or were they just fighting for their own power and prestige? Did they truly believe that Alara's cure was a dangerous fraud? Or were they simply unable to admit that an outcast had succeeded where they had failed? It's a question of human nature, a question that is as relevant today as it was then. For you, living through this, the answer is simple. They are driven by pride and a fatal inability to admit that they were wrong, and their actions are having a devastating effect. Their whispers are giving a voice to the kingdom's worst prejudices, and they are making it even harder for the kingdom to heal. The plague, of course, doesn't care about any of this. It continues to spread, its tendrils reaching into every corner of the kingdom. It's a reminder that no matter how many social walls you build, no matter how many lies you tell yourself, you are not immune. The king's beautiful palace, once a symbol of his kingdom's greatness, is now a symbol of its vulnerability. The plague has breached its walls, not just in the form of the crown prince, but in the form of a slow, creeping dread that is settling into the hearts of everyone who lives there. The walls of denial have failed, and the kingdom is now faced with the terrifying reality that it has to change, or it will cease to exist. The walls are not just a physical barrier, they are a metaphor for the kingdom's entire way of life. And now, they are crumbling. The kingdom's walls of denial, though invisible, are a formidable fortress. You're watching the rich and powerful continue to live in a bubble of self-deception, clinging to the belief that their status somehow insulates them from the plague. But this new, virulent strain is a ruthless equalizer. It has breached the invisible walls of class and wealth, and now it's beginning to tear at the very fabric of the kingdom's social elite. You hear whispers, not of a cure, but of a quiet, creeping fear. The King's Court is no longer a place of grand parties and confident pronouncements. It's a place of hushed tones and nervous glances. A powerful duke, a man who once scoffed at the idea of the plague reaching his pristine estate, has fallen ill. A countess, a woman renowned for her beauty and her intricate gowns, is now confined to her bed. Her skin mottled and pale, the kingdom's privileged class is finally beginning to realize that they are not special, that their money and their power cannot buy them immunity. This is where the story takes a dark and fascinating turn. The king, having been humbled by his son's illness, is now trying to be the voice of reason. He is urging his people, particularly the elite, to embrace Alara's cure and to help their less fortunate neighbors. But his words are falling on deaf ears. The royal physicians, still smarting from their public humiliation, are quietly fomenting dissent. They are telling their old clients that Alara's cure is a temporary fix, that it's a dangerous gamble, and that a true permanent solution will come only from them. They are promising a more sophisticated approach, a final cure that will eradicate the disease once and for all. It's a classic argument from authority, a tactic as old as time itself. They're saying, trust us, the educated and the elite, not her, the uneducated and the outcast. It's a desperate attempt to regain their lost power. And it's working on a populace that has been conditioned for centuries to believe that true wisdom resides only at the top of the social hierarchy. This is a little-known detail that often gets lost in the grand narratives of history. In many pandemics, the initial medical establishment, when faced with an effective but unconventional remedy, doesn't just reject it, it actively tries to discredit it. It's not just about a difference in opinion, it's a battle for control, for prestige, for the very soul of the medical profession. The royal physicians in your kingdom are a perfect example of this. They are so consumed by their own pride and their own sense of importance that they are willing to endanger the lives of their fellow citizens just to prove a point. They are no longer doctors, they are politicians, and their currency is fear and doubt. The king, meanwhile, is doing his best to fight back. He has officially made Alara the kingdom's head healer, and he has given her all the resources she needs to produce her cure on a massive scale. But the logistics are a nightmare. Alara's cure relies on a specific combination of rare herbs that grow only in a distant, hard-to-reach forest. The kingdom's infrastructure, once a source of pride, is now struggling under the weight of this new, massive demand. The supply lines are long and tenuous, and they are constantly being sabotaged by those who either want to profit from the crisis or who are being manipulated by the disgruntled royal physicians. The kingdom, once so efficient and so orderly, is now a chaotic mess of competing interests and hidden agendas. This is where the academic debate still rages. Was the king's appointment of Alara as head healer a genuine act of humility and an attempt to save his kingdom? Or was it a desperate last-ditch effort to appear as if he was in control? Did he truly believe in Alara? Or did he just see her as a convenient political tool? The truth, as is often the case, is probably a bit of both. He was a man of immense ego who had just been deeply humbled, and he was trying to do the right thing. But he was also a king who was trying to maintain a semblance of control in a kingdom that was spiraling into chaos. His actions were a mix of genuine compassion and political necessity, and the result was a kingdom that was still deeply and dangerously divided. The plague, in a twisted bit of irony, is about to provide a final, devastating lesson. The royal physicians, in their desperate attempt to undermine Alara, have been experimenting with their own final cure, a concoction of harsh chemicals and powerful stimulants that they believe will shock the body into fighting off the disease. They've been testing it on a few desperate and often poor patients in secret. They are so consumed by their own pride that they are willing to risk everything to prove that they, and not Ilara, are the true saviors of the kingdom. They are a bit like that scientist in a B movie who creates a monster in his lab, thinking he can control it, only to have it turn on him. It's a predictable and tragic bit of hubris. The results of their experiments are, of course, a complete and utter disaster. Their final cure doesn't work. Instead, it has a terrible, unforeseen side effect. It doesn't kill the plague, but it mutates it, creating a new, even more virulent strain that is resistant to both their own concoctions and, horrifyingly, to Ilara's cure. The plague, in a way, has just outsmarted them. It has used their arrogance, their hubris, against them. It has taken their cure and turned it into a weapon. A biological monster that is now loose in the kingdom. The whispers of a new, terrifying disease are beginning. Not from the poor, but from the very elite who were so convinced of their own superiority. The walls of denial have crumbled, and the kingdom is now faced with a nightmare of its own creation. The desperate gamble of the royal physicians has failed spectacularly, and their arrogance has just sealed the fate of the entire kingdom. The kingdom, once a beacon of progress and unwavering self-confidence, now finds itself teetering on the edge of the abyss. The walls of denial, both physical and social, have been utterly shattered. The new strain of the plague, a terrifying creation of the royal physician's pride, is spreading like wildfire. It's no longer a disease of the poor or the rich or the outcast. It's a disease of everyone, the beautiful. Vibrant Kingdom is now a ghost town, a place of silent streets and shuttered windows. The air, once thick with the scent of roasted meats and perfume, now carries a faint, sickening odor of decay and fear. The king's grand palace, the symbol of his kingdom's greatness, is now a place of quarantined despair. The king himself, a man once so proud and so sure of his own authority, is now a humbled, broken figure, watching his kingdom crumble around him. It's in this moment of utter despair that a new hope, a tiny flicker of light in the overwhelming darkness, emerges. The king, in his desperation, remembers an old story, a legend he'd dismissed as a child's tale. It was a story about an outcast's insight, a tale of a long-ago plague that was stopped not by the learned doctors of the day, but by a solitary figure who lived on the fringes of society. He remembers a detail from the story, a detail he had always found absurd. The outcast had used the wisdom of the animals to find a cure. He remembers a phrase from the tale, something about a weeping flower that only blooms in the darkest of places. It's a thin thread of a rumor, a whisper from a long-forgotten past. But it's all he has left. This is a fun little historical tidbit in many ancient cultures. The wisdom of the animals and the natural world was seen as a legitimate source of knowledge. People watched what animals ate when they were sick, where they went to find shelter, and what plants they avoided. This was a form of empirical science, a hands-on, observational way of understanding the world. The king's kingdom, in its rush to embrace modern medicine and abstract theories, had lost touch with this ancient wisdom. The outcast's insight is not some magical cure, it's a return to the basics, a humbling acknowledgement that sometimes the answers are right in front of you, if only you're willing to look. The king, in his desperation, sends out a royal decree, not for his physicians, but for Ilara. He summons her to his side, not as a healer, but as a confidant, a partner in this new, desperate quest. He tells her the story of the weeping flower, of the outcast's insight. He asks her if she knows anything about it. Alara, a woman who has spent her life studying the natural world, smiles a sad, knowing smile. She tells him that the weeping flower is not a legend, it's a real plant. A beautiful, but rare, flower that grows only in a hidden cave high in the mountains. A cave that is so dangerous to reach that it has long been considered off limits. She tells him that she has heard of it, that she knows of its healing properties, but that she has never dared to seek it out. The academic debate still rages. Was the king's memory of the legend a genuine stroke of insight? Or was it a desperate, convenient invention to give his people a sense of hope? Did he truly believe in the outcast's insight? Or was he just trying to find a way to shift the responsibility for the kingdom's failure onto someone else? The truth is, it doesn't matter. The king has just given his people a new story, a new hope, a new reason to believe. He has just given them a mission, a quest to save the kingdom. Not with the arrogance of the past, but with the humility of the present. He has just given them a new hero. Not a king, or a general, or a royal physician, but an outcast. A woman who was once a pariah? A woman who now holds the key to the kingdom's survival? The king's decree is a game changer. It's a direct slap in the face to the remaining royal physicians, to the elite who are still trying to maintain their social walls. The king is no longer pretending to have the answers. He is admitting that he doesn't, and that the only hope lies in the hands of an outcast. He is telling his people that the old ways are dead, and that the only way forward is to embrace a new, and more humble, way of being. He is telling them that they have to be willing to climb a mountain, to face danger and uncertainty. If they want to save themselves, he is telling them that the price of their hubris has been immense, and that the only way to atone for it is with courage, humility, and a deep respect for the natural world. The call goes out, not for an army, but for volunteers. The king asks for his bravest, his most skilled, to join a small group that will venture into the mountains, into the dangerous, unknown wilderness, to seek out the weeping flower. He's not asking for an army of soldiers. He's asking for a group of explorers, of survivalists, of people who understand the natural world. It's a desperate race against time, a final, monumental effort to save a kingdom that has just learned a terrible, humbling lesson. The outcast's insight, once a dismissed legend, is now the kingdom's last and only hope. And you, a citizen of this crumbling kingdom, are watching with bated breath, wondering if this last, desperate gamble will pay off. The king's call for volunteers is met with a mix of fear and desperate hope. The city's bravest and most skilled individuals, not soldiers or knights, but hunters, trackers, and herbalists, step forward. They are a motley crew, a microcosm of the kingdom's new reality, a mix of classes. A group brought together not by wealth or status, but by a shared terror and a common purpose. You watch as they gather in the city square, their faces a mixture of grim determination and nervous energy. Alara, the healer, stands among them. Her presence a silent testament to the fact that the kingdom's old ways are truly dead. She is no longer an outcast, she is their leader, their guide into the unknown. They are a small group, a handful of people tasked with a monumental mission to venture into the treacherous, plague-ridden wilderness and find the weeping flower, the only hope for a kingdom on the brink of collapse. This is a little-known detail that often gets lost in the heroic narratives of history. In times of crisis, it's rarely the people in power who save the day. It's the people with the practical skills, the ones who know the land, who understand the natural world, who truly make a difference. The king, in his hubris, had always relied on his generals and his scholars, but in this moment of truth, he has to rely on his hunters and his trackers. It's a profound lesson in humility, a lesson that has been a hard one. The kingdom is about to learn that true strength lies not in titles or power, but in skill and knowledge. no matter where it comes from. The journey is a brutal one. The plague has not just ravaged the cities, it has seeped into the very wilderness itself. The forests are eerily silent, the usual sounds of birdsong and chattering animals replaced by a profound, unsettling stillness. The air is heavy, the sky a perpetual gray, as if the sun itself has given up on the kingdom. The group of volunteers, led by Alara, presses on, their path a mix of treacherous mountain passes and dense, overgrown forests. They face not just the dangers of the wilderness, but the dangers of the plague itself. They have to be constantly vigilant, watching for the signs of sickness in each other, a cough, a fever, a telltale paleness in their faces. They are living a desperate race against time, knowing that every moment they spend in the wilderness is a moment that more people are dying back in the city. This journey is a powerful metaphor for the kingdom's own struggle. They are not just climbing a mountain, they are climbing out of their own arrogance, out of their own past mistakes. They are not just seeking a flower, they are seeking a new identity, a new way of being. They are leaving behind the walls of their pride and their denial, and they are venturing into a world that is raw, unforgiving, and real. They are being forced to work together, to rely on one another, to build a new kind of community based on mutual respect and shared purpose. The hunter's knowledge of the land and the tracker's ability to find a safe path. The herbalist's understanding of the plants, all of these skills, once dismissed by the kingdom's elite, are now the very things that are keeping them alive. The academic debate still rages about the nature of this journey. Was it a genuine quest for a cure, or was it a form of collective penance? A way for the kingdom to atone for its sins. Was the weeping flower a real plant? Or was it a symbol? A powerful myth that gave the people the courage to fight on the answer? As is often the case, is probably a mix of both. The weeping flower may have been a real plant, but its true power lay in the hope it represented. In the fact that it gave the kingdom a reason to believe again. It was a physical manifestation of a spiritual journey. A journey from arrogance to humility, from division to unity. After weeks of brutal travel, they finally reach the hidden cave. It's a breathtaking place. A cavern filled with an ethereal, soft light. And at its center, growing from a crack in the rock, is the weeping flower. It's a beautiful, luminescent plant. Its petals a soft, glowing white. Its leaves a deep, velvety green. It's a sight that fills the group with a sense of awe and a renewed sense of purpose. They gather the flowers carefully, reverently, knowing that they are holding the fate of their kingdom in their hands. They have succeeded. They have found the kingdom's last, and only, hope. But the journey back is just as dangerous as the journey there. And they are now faced with the terrifying reality that they have to get the flowers back to the city before it's too late. The race against time has just become even more desperate, and the kingdom's final act of survival is about to begin. The weary, triumphant group returns to a kingdom on its last legs. The sight that greets them is one of profound, heartbreaking despair. The streets are all but empty, save for the occasional pallid figure shuffling along, or the grim, silent cart carrying away the dead. The air hangs heavy with a sense of loss and resignation. The plague, in its final, mutated form, has taken an immense and irreversible toll. The kingdom, in its collective arrogance, has paid a terrible price. You see it in the eyes of the people, a look of profound sorrow and exhaustion that has replaced the fear. They are no longer panicked, they are defeated. The walls of denial have not just crumbled. They have been ground into dust by the relentless march of the plague. The king, a man who has lost so much, greets the returning volunteers with a look of profound humility. He is no longer a proud, arrogant ruler. He is a man who has just learned the hardest lesson of his life. He takes the weeping flowers from Alara, his hands shaking, a silent tear rolling down his cheek. He sees in those flowers not just a cure, but a symbol of his kingdom's failures and its potential for redemption. He has just been given a second chance, a chance to rebuild, to atone, to do things differently. But the cost of his hubris and the hubris of his kingdom is immense and irreversible. This is a common historical fact. The aftermath of a devastating plague or pandemic is rarely a time of unbridled joy. It's a time of profound sadness, of collective trauma, and of grappling with the irreversible changes that have been wrought. The kingdom's people have not just lost their loved ones, they have lost their sense of self. They have lost their belief in their own greatness, in their own invincibility. They have been stripped of their arrogance, and in its place, a raw, painful humility has taken hold. The kingdom is no longer a golden age. It is a kingdom of survivors, a kingdom of mourners, a kingdom of people who have just been given a second chance to build a better world. Alara and her team work tirelessly, using the weeping flowers to create a new, potent cure for the mutated plague. The effects are immediate and dramatic. The sick, those who are not yet too far gone, begin to recover. The fever breaks. The mottling on the skin begins to fade. And a new, fragile hope begins to bloom in the hearts of the people. But the kingdom is still a place of immense loss. So many are gone. So many families have been torn apart. The beautiful, vibrant kingdom is now a place of silent, empty homes and broken hearts. The plague, in its final, devastating lesson, has taught them that their greatest strength was not their wealth, their power, or their progress, but their compassion, their unity, and their humility. The king, in a final, profound act of humility, makes a public apology. He stands before his people, not in his royal robes, but in simple clothes. And he admits his failures. He admits that he was wrong to build the wall, wrong to listen to his arrogant physicians, and wrong to dismiss the wisdom of an outcast. He tells his people that the plague was a terrible price to pay for their pride, and he promises that they will rebuild, not just their cities, but their values. He promises that the new kingdom will be one of equality, compassion, and respect for all, regardless of their social status. He has finally learned that a true king is not one who is worshipped for his power, but one who is loved for his humility and his wisdom. The academic debate still rages on this very point. Was the king's apology a genuine act of contrition? Or was it a politically savvy move to save his throne? Did he truly change? Or was he just a desperate man doing what he had to do to survive? The answer, as is often the case, is probably a mix of both. The plague had humbled him in a way that nothing else could have, but he was also a politician, and he knew that his old way of ruling was no longer sustainable. He was a man who had been forced to change, and in doing so, he had become a better leader. The kingdom is a place of profound sadness, but it is also a place of profound change. The old social walls are gone, and a new kind of community is beginning to emerge. The people, in their shared grief and their shared survival, are finally beginning to see each other not as different classes, but as fellow human beings. They are helping each other, sharing what little they have, and working together to rebuild their world. The price of their hubris has been immense and irreversible, but the lesson they have learned is a priceless one. The kingdom is no longer a place of arrogant self-belief. It is a place of humble, hard-won wisdom. A kingdom that has just been given a second chance, a chance to build a better and more compassionate world. The kingdom, now a place of somber quiet and profound change, begins the long and arduous process of rebuilding. The vibrant energy of the Golden Age is gone, replaced by a new, more subdued determination. You see it in the faces of the people, a look of profound humility and a shared sense of purpose. They are no longer building monuments to their own greatness. They are building homes, hospitals, and communities. The grand, arrogant architecture of the past is being replaced by something more functional, more compassionate, more human. The king, a man forever changed by the plague, is leading the charge, but not with edicts and commands. He is leading by working alongside his people, his hands dirty, his brow furrowed with a new kind of worry. A worry not about his legacy, but about his people's well-being. The academic debate still rages. Did the plague truly change the kingdom? Or was it just a temporary reaction to a crisis? Did the king's humility last? Or did he eventually revert to his old, arrogant ways? The truth, as is often the case, is complex. The plague was a powerful teacher, a brutal force that exposed the kingdom's deepest flaws. It was a catalyst for change, a moment of profound transformation. But the human heart is a stubborn thing, and the old ways of thinking, the old prejudices, are not so easily erased. The new kingdom, the one that is being built, is a place of both hope and struggle. It is a place where the memory of the plague is a constant, humbling reminder of the price of arrogance. But it is also a place where the old, insidious whispers of class and status still linger, a constant threat to the new, fragile sense of unity. The kingdom's new beginning is a difficult one. The economy is in shambles, the population is decimated, and the collective trauma is immense. But in the midst of this devastation, something beautiful is beginning to emerge. The people, in their shared grief and their shared survival, have forged a new kind of community. The walls of class and status, once so rigid, are now gone. The rich and the poor, the powerful and the weak, are working side by side, united by a common purpose. They are learning from each other, sharing their knowledge, and building a new kind of society. A society based on empathy and mutual respect. Ilara, the once outcast healer, is now a revered figure, a symbol of the kingdom's new values. Her knowledge is not just a cure for the plague, it is a cure for the kingdom's arrogance. A powerful reminder that true wisdom lies not in power or prestige, but in humility and a deep respect for the natural world. The king, in a final, profound act of humility, commissions a new monument. It's not a statue of himself or of a great general, but a simple stone obelisk in the center of the city. It has no grand inscriptions, no boasts of victory or power. It simply lists the names of all those who were lost to the plague. A silent, somber reminder of the price of hubris. It's a monument to their failures, a monument to their loss, and a monument to the new. Humble beginning they are now building. It is a powerful and deeply moving statement, a testament to the fact that the kingdom has finally learned its lesson. The golden age of arrogance is over, and the new era, an era of hard-won wisdom and profound humility, has just begun. Now, as the long night finally begins to draw to a close, you can feel the quiet hum of the new kingdom, a low, gentle thrum of life and resilience. The terrible, arrogant plague that outsmarted an entire kingdom has finally run its course. The kingdom has been changed forever, its people scarred but not broken, its spirit humbled but not defeated. The journey from a place of unshakable pride to a place of profound humility has been a long and brutal one. But it is a journey that has transformed a kingdom of gilded lies into a kingdom of honest, humble truth. The story of your kingdom's terrible plague is not just a story of sickness and death. It is a story of arrogance and humility, of failure and redemption, of a people who had to lose everything to finally find their way. The lights are dimming. The hum of the fan is a soft whisper, and you can feel yourself drifting, a soft, sleepy weight settling over you. As the kingdom, in its new, quiet humility, finally finds a way to rest,